Okay, hey everybody, I'm doing a review of the Shadowscapes Tarot. This is not the first deck I got, but this is the second deck I got. The first deck I ever got was the Art Nouveau Tarot, and my teacher suggested that I get something that has a little bit more symbolism than the Art Nouveau, and so I went for the Shadowscapes Tarot, and I just really loved the artwork. It was really beautiful. This is by Stephanie Puimunla. She also did some of the text for it, as well as Barbara Moore. This is one way you could buy the deck is just in the deck by itself in a little box like this. There's also another set that comes in a bigger box, and you would also get the companion book. I bought just the deck. I did not buy the companion book. This was actually given to me by one of my fellow students in my tarot class. It was really serendipitous. I had bought this and she had bought the book without buying the deck. And then when we wound up in the class together, she was like, "This book must have been meant for you because I never bought the cards, but I had the book and I never read it." So she gave me the book. The book is nice because the cards are small, so this has larger images of the cards so that you could see some of the details, because this is very detailed artwork, and so it's a little hard to see on the cards because they're a little small. Unfortunately, the book is in black and white, so you don't get to enjoy the large images of the beautiful artwork you have to do with the black and white versions in the book. Each card has a little story explaining the card, really beautiful descriptions. I haven't used it too much. I have read through it every once in a while, especially if there's a card that I'm, curious about why they chose some of the artwork for it. But I just really liked having it. It's really nice to be able to see the artwork up close. So back to the deck. This is a pretty standard tarot deck. It's 78 cards, all the regular types of cards. The symbolism is similar to the Rider-Waite deck, but it's also very different in some ways. The deck does come with a little white book if you buy the deck by itself. Pretty standard little white book. Has a couple spreads in the back, which I've never used, but they're there if you want them. So let me go through. This is the major arcana, and what's also nice about this deck is that the minor arcana all the pip cards are illustrated, so you don't have just the symbols on the card by themselves. It's actually fully illustrated images on every single card, which is really nice. So going through the major arcana, this is the Fool card. You can see that it has the same type of feel, but it's got a lot of different things from what you would expect of a Rider-Waite. You have a fox here instead of a dog. She's on a tower instead of a cliff. But it has the same kind of feeling. The Magician is very different from the Rider-Waite. You have some of the same symbolism, like the infinity over his head. And what I thought was interesting is that the four elements are actually represented on these ribbons. So you have fire, water, air, and earth, as in a candle, shells, a feather, and leaves. So the symbolism is kind of there, but it's just really different. You really have to kind of dig for it and really, look into the card. High Priestess is also very, very different. There's no scroll or Torah in this one, or columns or anything, but there's, you could kind of find things that are similar. You have an owl for kind of like that wisdom. Also has a pomegranate, which is similar to kind of wisdom imagery. And yeah, so again, you kind of have to dig for things, but this is definitely not anywhere really near traditional imagery, but it's similar. And similar kinds of things. This is the Empress. Just interesting. It's really, you can't deny the beauty of these cards. But yeah, a lot of the imagery is different. The Emperor, again, different, but similar kind of imagery. Kind of, not really. some of the cool stuff is like, you know, the Emperor is an Aries card and he's got horns, so you kind of can get that kind of information from it. But yeah, again, kind of have to find your own. The Hierophant, this is nowhere near a pope or a priest with people at his feet. But you could think of this almost like, you know, that kind of learning, teaching, like Mother Willow almost, because it's a man made out of a tree. So it's kind of like that ancient wisdom learning. He's got a third eye. So it's interesting symbolism. It's very different, but yeah, pretty interesting. Lovers. I thought this card was interesting because, I mean, in the traditional lovers card, they're not even really close to each other, and here they're, you know, they're kissing. But there's a lot of the similar kind of ideas of temptation. You've got the snake with the apple, also the sense of, you know, priorities and things like that with like a crown and the woman. So, you know, decisions and things like that. And you could think of like the sun, you know, there's no angel, but you could think of the sun as being like a higher power symbolized there. The Chariot, at least it has a chariot on it. Doesn't have a black and white lead, you know, 2 one-horned goats. It has a crab though, so that is good. So you at least know it's ruled by Cancer. But other than that, it's very, very different. You don't have the stars, you don't have any of the thing behind it. But you do have like a city in the background. So there's some, but not all of the imagery. You really kind of have to dig it up yourself. But still a lot to pull from. I mean, again, you can't deny the detail that goes into these cards. Strength is got pretty much the kind of stuff that you'd be looking for in Strength, with the lion, but the lion has horns. So yeah, interesting kind of take. There's no infinity symbol on this one, which I find is interesting because that is on the traditional Rider-Waite. The Hermit, I love this Hermit, probably because the Hermit is one of my ruling cards, so I always identify with it. I just think it's really pretty. It's not an old man, it's like possibly a woman. I don't know, you can't really see their face or really even their body, but it has, you know, the lantern lighting the way. They're by themselves, but really interesting. Also, there's a lot of different types of animals throughout these cards. Different types of birds and cats and goats and lions and foxes. And there's also a lot of fairies and nymphs kind of things. This is the Wheel of Fortune, which is lacking a lot of the traditional imagery. You don't have the animals in the corners. You don't have the letters or any of that traditional imagery. Justice, again, different. I mean, she's got the scales. She doesn't have a sword. She has a feather. But I guess you could see the feather and the sword kind of being the same vein, being that they're both air symbols. Yeah, just, again, different but similar. At least all the names are the same. They didn't really rename any of the major arcana. The Hanged Man, I like this Hanged Man. I thought it was cool. Not really tied though, and it isn't in the traditional legs in a 4 shape. He's got both legs back instead of being hung by 1 foot. But it makes for interesting imagery if you're looking at him this way or upside down. So he kind of looks like he's kneeling this way, and then this way he's like hanging. So, and if you see, I just realized it's kind of interesting because he's supposed to go this way, right? This is how the title is supposed to be this way. He's the Hanged Man, so he should be hanging. But his hair is actually going against gravity. So he actually looks almost more natural in this direction. I always thought this looked like a question mark too. This is the Death card. I love the Death card. Not very much like Grim Reaper imagery here. This is actually a phoenix. So really, you know, that rebirth, you know, all the re's. rebirth, regeneration, transformation, all that kind of stuff, symbolized with the phoenix, which is really, really pretty. And you also have like a phoenix and an egg down here, so it's really, I really like the death card. Again, the death card is one of my ruling cards, so I really like this one. Temperance. Temperance is very, very different from the normal temperance. There is no cups of water here, but you do have like a yin-yang, like a mixing feeling, so very similar to temperance with that, you know, mixing the things together, combining. And she is an angel, but she's also not very androgynous. It's definitely a woman. But there's still a lot to pull from. You've got the dragons, and you've got the phoenix, and you've got dragons here with the charms, and so there's a lot you can pull from. The devil, I love this devil. The devil is usually kind of, I don't know, I don't really like the normal imagery. I think it's kind of gross. But I really like this one. It really has all the feelings of what the devil should be about. You know, that being manipulated. There's, you know, he's got the strings, there's a puppet here, and he's got like a heart in his hands, and there's a person locked up here, and the key is that feeling of, you know, addiction, or being trapped, or things are out of your control. Someone is, you know, or something is really in control of your life and not you. So it's really interesting. But I really, really, really like this this devil. The imagery makes a lot more sense to me. The tower. Tower is pretty classic. Tower being struck by lightning and the top falling off. Things that are different though is there's no people falling or reaching for a crown or any of the classic imagery. So I mean, it gets the general point across, but again, I mean, there could be more, but it's still pretty. The star is different. You do have like the water below, stepping in the water, and the star, but you don't have a lot of the other imagery, pouring the water in the, you know, all that kind of stuff. But I think it still gets across that feeling of hope and guidance and those kinds of images. The moon is very different. There are no howling dogs or towers or lobsters or whatever you want to call those. This is very, very different. You have a mushroom ring, you have fairies, you have a woman with her hand bandage coming undone with the heart, and she's holding a mask, but her face looks like it still has a mask. So it kind of has that feeling of, you know, the mystery or the unclarity, and I really feel like the meaning comes more through this kind of like unknown, kind of otherworldly thing happening, and then also the masks. It's like she feels like she's taken the mask and she could see what that layer was without understanding that she's wearing a mask herself. So it's kind of that trying to reveal what's hidden, but there's still things hidden. So it's an interesting take on the moon. But I love how there's absolutely no link to the traditional Rider-Waite. There's no water, there's no towers, there's no dogs, there's no sun behind the moon. There's just a lot missing, but it's special in its own way. The sun, I mean, there's no horse, there's no baby on the horse. But, I mean, it's got a giant sun and a bunch of birds and fairies and people. And it's happy, which is pretty much the sun in one word. Judgment. Judgment, I really like this judgment a lot. Instead of being a graveyard, which is all creepy and stuff, you have poppies, which symbolize like sleeping and such, and then all the spirits rising up and the butterflies. And it's that, you know, awakening and being called up kind of imagery without it being a graveyard of dead families, which is nice. It's a little bit less scary. So when you're reading for someone and you're like, oh, you're being called to something, they're like, really? Because there's a bunch of dead people on my card. Okay, last one. This is the world. Again, there is very little in common with the original or the traditional Rider-Waite. It's just woman holding an orb with the earth, looks like the earth behind. But yeah, really none of that traditional imagery. So kind of have to figure it out yourself. But it's still pretty, and pretty much when it comes up, I'm just like, oh, the world. So, yeah, you get everything. Just kidding. But yeah, so that's the world. So that's all the major arcana. I mean, they're really pretty. They're obviously very, very different from some traditional imagery, but that's them. So these are the minor arcana. Like I said before, they're all completely illustrated. These are all the cups. I put them all in order so I could kind of show you what they look like. That's all the swords. This is all the pentacles. I won't go through these as much. I just want to show you some things that are interesting about them. They're all kind of color-coded. The wands, you could tell, have kind of a yellow cast. So that's something that you could, notice right away. Also, the wands have a lot of foxes. Foxes and lions seem to be very popular in the wands. So here, I'll just kind of show you. So you got the ace, the 2, 3, 4. But you can see, like, this is nothing like the traditional 4, where or the traditional 5. So, I mean, it's kind of different, but there are some things that are the same. He's got the laurels, this is the 6, and there's laurels on the traditional one. So, but I mean, that's the 7. They're very different. At least in the wands. A lot of the wands are very different. Yeah, I love the queen, though, with her harp. It's so pretty. And the king. So, but I mean, with the lions, he's got that Leo feeling of, like, fire. So, so that's pretty cool. This is the pentacles. It is called pentacles. These are all very green and kind of purple, which goes perfect with earth. One thing that's really popular in the suit of pentacles is dragons. There's a lot of dragons throughout. Of course, now I've only found a couple, but they're there. They're throughout. And I think dragons are a really good fit for pentacles because dragons are kind of known for hoarding, material like gold or treasure or whatever. So it kind of goes with that materialistic kind of theme. So you got the ace, 2. This is probably one of the most similar because, I mean, at least he's doing like that kind of balancing act. But there's the 3, the 4. The 4 is kind of similar because he's like holding on to the coins. The 5 has a stained glass window and she's kind of sad, but other than that, it's pretty different. The 6, from looking at this, I couldn't even tell you what the 6 looks like. The 7 is kind of similar. There's the stuff growing on the bushes, so you kind of have that feeling. The 8, yeah, the 8 has a spider, which I'm not very happy about. But, yeah, again, I couldn't tell you what it looks like in the other deck because this is so different. The 9, again, very different. The 10 is very, very different. I mean, the 10 on the actual deck or on the Rider-Waite is like a family and stuff, and this is just a woman with her dragon. I like the page. The page is pretty cool. I got an owl. There's a sleeping dragon. Interesting. I think the knight being on a dragon who's kind of tied up kind of fits with that knight that doesn't move. And I love the king and queen of the pentacles. I think they're really cool. So let's go to the cups. The cups is all kind of sea life or fish and water. Very, very watery. A lot of mermaids. Mermaids there. Those are just people. There's a mermaid here. I love the 8. 8 is really pretty. She's an anglerfish mermaid, which is really cool. This one doesn't have much water in it. They're kind of in floating island cloud city, but it's interesting. I like this one too, the 6 of Cups. It usually has children on it, and this one it very much has a child, a tea party with her stuffed animals. So it's got that feeling. This is also, well, not really even that close, but I mean, there's some stuff spilt and some stuff not spilt, so. 4 of Cups. This one's very closer to traditional, at least they're having a party. 2 of Cups, kind of similar, missing a lot of symbolism. And then the Ace is very different, flying fish. And then we have the Swords. Me and Swords never get along, but I mean, the Queen of Swords is on the cover, and she's kind of what drew me to this deck, so I can't be too angry with them, but we never really got along. That's just, I always struggle with the Swords. So we have the Ace. As you can see, the Swords are very purple. Lots of purple. So you could think of the purple as like, you know, the crown chakra, third eye chakra, kind of like that higher, you know, higher plane thinking, you know, the cerebral kind of things. So a lot of bird imagery, a lot of swans, 3, 4. Some of it's similar, but it's pretty different. Like this. Like what? It's so different. And the 7. At least there's someone like trying to steal something, but he only has 1 sword. And the swan's head looks like it's on upside down. But again, it's similar imagery, you know, the being trapped and stuff. I don't know what's going on back here. But I mean, you could pull similar meanings from it. The 9 of Swords, which I think is interesting because all the other ones they actually have like the amount of swords, but this one they only have 1 sword and all the rest are like tattooed on the chest, which I thought was interesting. And then this is the 10 of Swords, which there's not a single sword in here. It's all birds, so I guess the birds are representing the swords. So very interesting, and they're not even like real birds, they look like spirit birds. So, very different. Page of Swords, Knight of Swords, he's flying. The Queen of Swords is very, very beautiful. And I like the King of Swords. For a guy that's supposed to be all logical and stuff, it's pretty blatant to have what is that called? Da Vinci's dude in the circle. So very logical kind of man, also with the owl. So that kind of thinking, knowledge, that kind of stuff. So that's the deck. I really, really like it a lot. It's really pretty. I find this deck to be very friendly. I never get it to be really like, ooh, doom and gloom, but it's also not it's not like super, you know, super happy either. I mean, it can tell some serious stuff, but it does it in like a gentle way. I think this deck I could consider it very gentle. So, yeah, and I mean, the cards are nice. They're not like super glossy. They're not super matte. I like that the border is not white. It's actually kind of a pearlescent metallic. The backs are very pretty with kind of a Celtic knot type of thing, or like Celtic motif. Oh, sorry. But yeah, I mean, I really like it. I've used this one a lot. I mean, it's like the cards are bent from me using them so much from shuffling. But this is one of my go-to decks. I find it a little hard to read for myself. I don't know if that's just me in general or if it's these cards, but I find that they talk better about other people than myself. That might be just me, but that's kind of how I feel. So that's the deck. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Also, give me a thumbs up if you like this, and I will hopefully do more reviews in the future. This is my first one, so I hope you liked it, and I see you all soon.